Well, I'll be honest with you. I screwed up. I've been turning wrenches my whole life, but every now and then a simple mistake slips in and bites me in the ass. This fuel rail job should have been quick, easy, in and out, but one small slip turned it into a long and frustrating afternoon.
What the fuck is going on there?
It could have been an expensive mistake, could have stopped our trip, but I owned it, fixed it, and I figured I'd show it to you, because we've all been there. Let's get into it. Welcome! We're Blaine and Janice, and we're bringing our 1969 aluminum yacht back to life the only way that works. Tear it down, put in new tech, and do it ourselves. If you like real wrench-turning boat work, hit subscribe. A major upgrade starts in January.
So we've run these engines for about 2,000 nautical miles now, and they've been actually pretty phenomenal. But one of the things that has been an issue right from the get-go is I've had a leak on where the fuel rail pressure sensor screws into the fuel rail. At first, I thought it was just a bad fuel rail pressure sensor seat, so I tried tightening it to Torx specs. Didn't help. I got a new fuel rail pressure sensor, tried that at Torx spec. It didn't help, still leaks. So I think what it is, and you can kind of see it, is there's almost like a little bit of galling around the fuel pressure rail where the rail pressure sensor feeds in. So it's just not sealing. And when we're talking like 10 to 20,000 PSI, yes, you heard that correctly, fuel pressure pushing out on that. And there is nothing for a seal in there short of a face metal to metal. There's no crush washers. There's no taper fit. It is a straight on fitting, which just blows my mind. So anyway, I've got new fuel rails that already have the pressure sensors bolted onto them. So hopefully that will solve all of these issues. And I'm going to get to that right now. So the first thing I had to do, obviously, is turn off the fuel. I've got both my supply and my return lines shut down, so there's no chance of leaking fuel everywhere. There will be some, obviously, but we're hoping to keep it to a dull roar here. So yeah, I'll start by, now, keep in mind, I've got an ECU on these that I can see what my rail pressure is at. And I know that there's no rail pressure on here right now. If you're doing this on anything else, I'd recommend finding a way to check your rail pressure, because that's a lot of pressure there. And if there's still pressure built up, could hurt you pressure. So do not recommend doing this unless you have verified that your rail pressure is at 0. So yeah, I'm going to go on to disconnecting my fuel lines. Maybe. May need a crow's foot for some of these. Okay, so I've got all my line to rails loose, and I'm actually going to be obviously taking these right off, so we'll loosen those right off. This is obviously a lot easier on a boat than it is in a truck. I don't envy those guys in trucks that have to do this, because I have super good access to everything. Now I think if I remove injector line number 5, that'll get me access to loosen the injector nut on number 4, because right now I can't get my wrench quite in there. There's my fuel leaking now. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this guy right off of here. Okay, this one I can probably rock up out of the way. Maybe not. So hopefully I can get him moved out of the way without having to take my air intake horn off here. Maybe I can just shift up my little rubber grommet there. Not looking promising there. Okay, that gives me a little bit more room. There we go. And that guy can come off. Now, those two are out of the way. The only other one I've got to worry about is the fuel return line from the pressure safety valve, which is this guy in the front. Once again, this is completely different than the truck engines would be. I've got custom fittings on here. Well, standard fittings, but custom application here. So I'm just going to take that guy loose. Now, I should be able to just loosen up all my bolts here, and that guy should come right off. Should. Should is always the key word, because typically nothing ever works out quite like you hope it would. Sorry, that was a bit negative. One I forgot as well is my main inlet fitting here. There we go. That guy has got to come loose as well. Okay. And there goes my wrench into the bilge, which is not uncommon. Take out all of my bolts so nothing is going to get hung up on me. Then that guy will come right out. All right, so here I've got my new fuel rail with sensor. I'm just going to put my little return line fitting back into my port from my safety valve, and what that does is that's an overpressure valve for the fuel rail. So if you have an issue where your fuel pressure control valve goes out of whack or whatever, that guy just makes sure that you don't end up blowing something up or pump up or whatever. It bleeds pressure back to the tank. Okay, here we go. Okay, that guy can come out of there. Okay. I always hate taking stuff apart like this because there's so many high pressure fittings, and I'm always worried that one of the other ones is going to leak when you get it all back together again. Ideally, I would have replaced all of the high pressure lines on this as well. However, that was just not going to happen. Now, I grab my wrench out of the bilge. So, get that snug down. I'm certain there's a torque spec for these bolts. These are just the main hold down bolts for the rail, but I'm not going to worry about it. These can be a bit of a pain in the arse because they got a sleeve that sits there. We go. So those the pressure side on the actual rail side, they've actually got a collar that slides into a sleeve to keep them straight in the fuel rail, and that can be a little tricky to get back in that port. So be forewarned. That's the case there. Because these things don't exactly flex super well, and you don't want to damage the seat for the line, because that's what's holding back all that 20,000 pounds of pressure, is that little tapered seat. All right, so I've got my lines back on again, and just reconnecting my sensors. So I've got one rail pressure sensor and one crankcase pressure sensor. So they're pretty straightforward, easy. Snap, snap. And then I've got my PCV line I'll put back on here. Just like that. A quick wipe here from all the fuel that leaked out when I took the lines loose. Hopefully there'll be no more fuel leaking out from fuel rail pressure sensor or anywhere else for that matter. I mean, I've been doing this too long to assume that that's going to be the case. However, I'd like to think that's going to be the case. Okay, so all those are tight. Everything's back on. I'm now going to go turn my fuel back on again, and then we'll crank the engine over for a bit to get it primed. Okay, go ahead. What's that? Well, I probably would, but I didn't, so. Okay, go get it. What the f***? What is going on there? That was really odd. Can't say I like that very much at all. Just, you're off the hook for now. I gotta figure out what the f is going on here. What the fuck? Okay, so I opened up the wrong return valve, is what I did. That really sucks. Yay me. Hopefully I didn't do any damage to anything. Like a seal or whatever else. Okay, so now I get to figure out exactly what I f***ed up. Yay. This is the fun stuff. Basically, what happened was when I turned the fuel back on again, I actually turned the wrong one. Insert comments about poorly labeled fuel manifolds here. So now I got to figure out exactly what I've damaged, which really sucks. I'm very much not happy about that. So we'll see, because I'm getting fuel leaking into the front of the pump area here. Not exactly sure where it's coming from. So I'll show you guys. Right down in here, I'm getting fuel pooling. So something is still leaking, even though I've got the manifolds open, or had the manifolds open. So obviously I have perforated something there, whether it be a seal on the pump, whatever. I'm getting fuel in there. So now I've got to, pretty sure, pull the CP3 back off again and see if there's a seal I've damaged and whether I'm going to have one on board. I do have some seals on board, so I might be lucky there that I could replace, but yeah. Stupid mistake, and it's going to cost me some time for diagnosis and repair and likely some money. Yay. Who'd have thunk we'd be going right into something else on this. So I'm going to remove the CP3 pump to inspect it because I think the front lip seal for the shaft is pushed out. Got to be really careful on this nut because it can actually fall down inside the cover as well as the lock washer behind it. So what I usually do is I get something pointy. Right now I just have a file because it was the closest, easiest thing. And I just put it into the dimple on the end of the shaft there. And then you can thread out this nut and you don't have to worry about it falling into the crankcase because it is captured. So I'll take that off. And I'll put this back on there again. And we'll get that washer off. So there's a lock washer on here as well. If I can get it to move off of there. There we go. Take him off. So now that is just a matter of using a puller to pull that gear off, and then I can take the pump off the back. So I'm going to do that and turn it back on when I'm ready for that. All right, so there's my CP3, and as you can see on the front here, there's a lip seal. And then behind that lip seal, there's another lip seal pointed in the other direction. And what that does is this lip seal keeps the oil from going that way, and the other lip seal keeps the fuel from going that way. So I need to figure out what happened. I'm pretty sure what's happened is that inside lip seal is damaged, and it's bleeding fuel out of this port here. I think that's what that is a some sort of a port to allow the fuel to get out should it build up pressure in behind that oil seal. And that's to keep the oil or the fuel from pushing through into the oil, which is important. So I think what's happened is I've damaged that inner seal, and it's sneaking past and getting out in between because it was coming out in kind of like that upper area in the cover there. So unfortunately, this is going to require a fairly heavy disassembly of the pump because you can't get those seals out without taking this front plate off. Fortunately, I don't have to pull the pistons out to take that out. I can just pull the front plate off. So it could be worse for sure. And I'm hoping I still have some seals on board for that. I think I do. I had an extra rebuild kit, and I think it had some extra seals. So I'm going to go ahead and have a peek at that and see if I can figure it out. Okay, there we have it. I was really hoping to not have to be back into this pump quite so soon. But here we are. So you can see inside there maybe the seal that I was talking about. And as I said, you can see where the seal has inverted itself. I don't know if you can make out down on the bottom there. It's a little hard to see, but I can get a better... where is it? Right there. Yeah, you can see that little lip where it's lipped over. That's where my problem is. So that's going to be a bit of an issue because so far I have not yet been able to find my spare seals, which I know I have somewhere. So I'm going to look around a little bit more, see if I can't find those seals. If I can't, I'll have a good look and see if there's any damage on the lip of that seal and see if I can flip it back again. It's not ideal, but at least it will get me somewhere.
So we'll see how that goes. So far, I have not been able to find the seals. However, if they're not here, they're going to be at my house. And I still have someone that's coming out tomorrow that can go by my house and grab those seals. Cross fingers. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so couldn't find another seal. Like I said, I may have one at my house and I might have a friend get that one. However, for the time being, the seal didn't look to be damaged. It looked like it had just slipped and the engine didn't run for very long. So there doesn't appear to be any damage to the rubber of the seal. I flipped it back over again. Crossing fingers, it's going to work all right. Worst case scenario on that is I'm going to get leakage around that same area, which I'll know about right away. So we're gonna go with it like that, see how it works out. But as you can see, I've got pumped back together again. We're going to go back in with it and cross our fingers. But I think it's going to be fine. Okay, there we go. So while that was a colossal screw up on my part, fortunately it was fixable, and it really helps to have had those pumps apart and know how they're configured inside to be able to diagnose that and fix that so quickly and easily. I always say knowing every little bit about my boat is more important than warranty or anything else, and that was pretty much just proving it. So yep, got the pump apart, re-inverted the seal, at least for now, and 0 leaks. Everything's working great. There's no damage to the seal other than it was inverted in one spot, so we are good to go. Went from a could be stuck in the water somewhere to we are back on the go. So that could not have worked out any better, except if I didn't screw it up in the first place.
All right, there you go. Proof we all make mistakes even after decades of doing this stuff. If you want to stick with us and see the huge project we're starting in January, hit subscribe and tap the bell. It's going to be a good one.